So let us discuss 18th June 2015 newspaper here. The first thing is related to the street vendors. So there is a bill in the parliament which was converted into an act in 2012. That is street vendors, protection of livelihoods and regulation of street vending act 2014. So what this particular act says is this. Now there are four defining features of the act. Everywhere a survey has to be conducted. Once the survey is conducted, the street vendors have to be identified. Vending certificates have to be given to them. And the city will be divided into vending and non-vending zones. The non-vending zones, they are kept free of the vendors, and the vending zones, that's where they are supposed to conduct their business. Finally, during identification of these vendors and during survey being conducted, no vendor shall be evicted from his place. These are the four important points of the Vending Act. Now, the central to this street vendors protection is Town Vending Committee. So this Town Vending Committee is headed by the Municipal Commissioner, and also it consists of representatives of the vendors, local police, resident welfare associations, etc. Now it will identify, or it will help in conduct of survey, and it has to issue the certificates, that is vending certificates, to the people. Now entire street vending, it is designed across this TVC. But however, the major thing is this, the TVC was not at all constituted in many of the cities, and wherever they are constituted, it is just acting as a consultating missionary to the municipal authority. Even today, the municipal authorities will is continuing over the conduct of the street business in India. The entire diversity of Indian street business or Indian cities is linked to the street business. So the second challenge is this: the middle class resident welfare associations, they see the street vendors as disturbance, or they are the obstructors of the footpaths, etc. But if we can really see the meaning, so they contribute a lot to the economy. They provide for the demand to the small scale industries, and also they provide for the cheap distribution networks for the small scale industries. And also these are the people on whom the daily labor can depend upon with regard to their buying needs. And even a significant number of middle class population also depends on to them. So they have a significant role to play with regard to the economy is concerned. And second is, the local police also create their own rules in the maintenance of law and order. So especially, create a prohibition of using the height platforms to conduct their business. So this is one major challenge for them. And still, they are the victims of municipalities, that is local authorities, and the police, that is still visible. So unless the Street Vending Act has to be fully implemented and TVCs are being empowered, the street vendors cannot have a livelihood in the cities. And the grievance redressal mechanism also is there under the Street Vending Act, under which any person who has a grievance, a committee will be there, grievance redressal committee, with a sub-judge. And on the decisions of this grievance redressal committee, it can be appealed in the local authority. So this particular grievance redressal committees are not at all constituted in many of the places. And again, a certificate has to be issued for the vendor within 7 days, and no such mechanisms are being talked about. So in India, making the law is one thing and implementing the law is one thing, which is clearly visible because of this. Somehow, I became the fan of Sampath articles he wrote on big data and all these things. And he has a clear analysis in what he writes, and there is a clear clarity on the issues. Next is Mr. Correa, Charles Correa, the architect. Let us try to understand him. So previously, when Corbusier, the Lee Corbusier, the person who planned urban spaces in North India, when he passed away, that question was asked about him on the architecture with regard to the culture of India. Now even Correa is one such a figure. Charles Correa, he was born in Secunderabad, and then he shifted himself to Mumbai. What is the beauty of the Korean architecture? The first thing is the sensitivity to the needs of urban poor. It means that maximization of the space in the living areas with providing for the common meeting points. That is one thing which is very much central to this. Now there is a famous architect even from Kerala. He is from London. He also recently passed away. Try to understand about him. So if you remember, his name was Laurie Baker. So the Laurie Baker, and they have the common styles. But however, Laurie Baker mostly dependent on brick. But this person has dependent on something concrete. So in spite of depending on concrete, nature sensitive buildings are their major forte area. And again, most of them, most of their designs, they have more importance to the common spaces where the people meet. And along with that, so he is the architect of the Navi Mumbai, which we are seeing today. And one more thing is, still now his architecture is called as a combination architecture, which consists of traditional architectural values, where colonial bungalows of erstwhile British India colonial structures are being mixed with the symmetrical spaces. It means so the rectangular and square spaces, and finally a modernist use of the material. These three are the combinations. I am not an architect, but however these are the words used in explaining him. Sensitivity to the urban poor, sensitivity to the common spaces, modern architecture mixing with the traditional values is central to the Korean architecture. And the next architecture is next issue is related to the external sector in India. Now the trade deficit has decreased, exports also decreased, but imports have also decreased. The reason for the decrease in imports is decreased oil prices. But however, to what extent we can get comfort with the oil prices is a question. With the growing West Asian crisis, can this oil prices will remain low or not is a major challenge. And in the West, as the demand still is low, the exports are still low. Our Indian exports to these destinations are still low. And on the other hand, the positive side is about remittances. As the rupee has depreciated, the remittances of our expats to India has increased, so which is a very positive step. Now the challenges before us is, one is oil prices, next is US Fed, if it increases the interest rates, many of the NRI deposits or many of the remittances may go as deposits, and many of the investments in India may fly back into the US. So then automatically foreign exchange currency crisis can loom in. For that, RBI is already preparing itself and stocking the currency, and it is buying the currency in the open market. So that is what this article is about. And the next is a looming refugee crisis. So what this talks about? So a report has come up in recently. I was just going through that report, and today there is an editorial on that. So it is Amnesty International Global Refugee Crisis, a concept of neglect. So what this report has said is, it is shameful on the international community. It is a shameful failure if we see the refugees and their growing numbers. And most of these refugees are increasing in developing world and underdeveloped world. So the refugee crisis in these countries is going to be a humanitarian crisis, and large number of deaths will be seen. What are the reasons for this? We can broadly divide them into two areas. One is failure of the states. Example, if you take Syria and also Bahrain, the crisis in Bahrain, Egypt, all these failed states, as there is internal wars are looming into these states, that is creating a refugee crisis. We all know what the constructive effort India did in bringing these refugees back. Now, with regard to another people, if you take about Myanmar, Eritrea, where refugees are an example of the retribution of that particular country. The Rohingyas of Myanmar is a typical example to this. So the retribution towards a certain section of the people by the state, this is what is the second reason. Now what are the failures? Now the first thing is, West is uninviting towards these refugees. the European Union decreased rescue operations in the Mediterranean Sea. That is the reason why it is becoming dangerous for these refugees to cross the seas. And next is, the humanitarian crisis is worsening in the neighboring countries and they are uninviting too. If you see Rohingyas, most of them got drowned in the seas before they are being accepted by Indonesia, Malaysia and these countries. And also many of the people, they are involved with human trafficking, victims of human trafficking. And if you take United States, it's also not very active in taking these refugees to their country. And finally, UN High Commission for Refugees, it is also suffering from huge financial constraints. From this we can say the entire globe has failed with regard to the humanity with this humanitarian crisis. Now here there is a very good conclusion in the article. Any global decisions shall not be just based on geopolitical calculations. It also shall involve moral and humanitarian convictions. So, many of the solutions, when you think about the moral and humanitarian convictions also has to be central to this. So, this is what is being talked about. So, thank you very much. And today is 10th and 11th. At any cost, I will complete these audios. Due to hectic schedule, I was unable to do those things. And as I promised, whatever are pending, I will do them. Thank you very much.